The Cardinals are now 6-7 after 4 series to start the year. The offense has gone cold, which should have been the strength of this team. Caleb and I are going to react to all of that and more on this episode of Dealing the Cards. I love that graphic. It's so fun. Good job, Andrew, on that. But we're Caleb Noble's back joining us again. We've had him on the podcast before. He's obviously part of the Hard Nine podcast, and you can follow him on Twitter at CalebNoble08. And right now, Caleb, I don't know about you, but I came into the season expecting the Cardinals offense to be really good. And although I still believe it will be, it is at least starting to get a little bit concerning, the cold streaks, and it's feeling a lot of like 2023 all over again, which I kind of thought just wouldn't happen with the offense. How are you feeling as you watch the Cardinals offense day in and day out right now, seemingly not able to produce like their talent says they should?
Well, it's obviously frustrating. Like, not when a team is playing poorly offensively, it's just frustrating to watch in general.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to evaluate it. Like, there's multiple factors here. One, it's April. We know offense is always down everywhere in April, so that's a factor. They've played some pretty good teams, at least pitching wise. You know, Nola hasn't been great this year, but he's still Aaron Nola. They faced Zach Wheeler yesterday. And, you know, we've said this a lot, at least I have. If Goldie and Arenado aren't hitting, your offense is not going to score like you want them to. Like, they're batting second and fourth in the order for a reason.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things going on. Part of me wants to be optimistic because they're 6-7 with the best part of their team being bad.
Yes.
But the other part of me wants to be pessimistic because they could easily be, 9-4 or whatever.
Yeah.
That's bad math, but no, that is right. 9-4. Because their pitchers have produced way better than I thought they would in the first couple of weeks. So you could take it either way, but it's baseball, so you just kind of have to see what happens. But I still believe in the offense as a whole.
Yeah, where would you stand on that right now? Because I texted that, I think it was during yesterday's game, or maybe game one of the series. Probably game one because they lost that game. But I was like, I don't know if I should, there's two sides to the same coin here. You could feel either way and understand. You could be optimistic because the best part of the team is the one that's most frustrating right now. They're still winning games. The defense last year was atrocious and arguably might be the thing that they've done the best so far this year. Obviously, Victor Scott's error today wasn't great, and it's not like they're an elite defense right now, but they're playing way better than they did last year. Mm-hmm. The bullpen, although, I mean, you look at ERAs, and this early, I think it doesn't really tell the full picture, but like when they've been called upon, they usually delivered, especially the high leverage arms. The rotation has mostly been pretty good. Most of the games they've kept them in the game, and they should, even with a middle of the pack offense, be able to win the games. Like, they don't even need the top 10 unit to win some of those games. They just need to put 4 runs across, and they can only get 3. And then it's the offense that's struggling. So, like, I look at that vein, and I'm like, okay, we know the offense isn't this bad. So if they get that figured out, this should be good, right? But then you can also, to your point, look at it. It's like, is the pitching sustainable? Is the defense sustainable? Is the bullpen sustainable? If it's not, and the offense isn't trustworthy, then this is going to be I don't know, this could be another really bad season. So I lean on the optimistic side of it. I look at it as the offense is putrid right now, and it's not going to be this bad. Like, I'm not telling you Nato's going to come back and be himself again, but he's not a 500 OPS guy now. Neither is Goldschmidt. You don't have Lars Nootbaar right now. Jordan Walker's been terrible. You really only have 2, maybe 3 bats that are really performing at or above expectations right now. I guess Mason Wynn would count, but that's not like a significant bat. It's just he's not struggling like many of us would have thought he would. So where do you lean? Do you lean more you're optimistic about the offense or about the team because the offense hasn't started up yet and so you believe it will, or you're like, this could be a caution of this season could go haywire real quick?
I'm more optimistic just because I think 13 games in, everything's an overreaction, good or bad. Ivan Herrera, I could sit here and tell you he's the top 5 catcher in baseball. At the end of the year, that's most likely not going to be the case. I hope it is, but everything's going to be an overreaction, good or bad. So I'm more optimistic. I also think – I remember I think it was 2022, the Cardinals went like a week and a half without hitting a homer. Like, this is just in April. It's going to happen. It's weird. Yeah. Like, I think Jordan Walker's hit 3 balls that if it's June, they're gone in Busch Stadium. He had another one today. That's just the reality of it. It's hard to hit in Busch, especially in April. So I'm not too concerned, but I do think it's getting frustrating because they need to stop now. Like, you need to start piling wins. Like, this is a series they should have won. I thought that the Phillies looked awful the entire series. I thought. Like, their pitching was all right, but they were trying to give you the games where they were walking people. Their offense did not look like Bryce Harper, doesn't look like Bryce Harper. Like, you were very fortunate to face them and the Marlins when you did, and you came out 3-3. Like, you got to be better than that.
Totally agree. And part of this for me, why I'm also on the more optimistic end, is that the hitters that are struggling, the Nolan Arenado side of it, I think that's a whole other conversation. But I still know, like, he's still been a streaky guy in his career. So even if the lows are concerning right now, we should be used to at this point that Nolan Arenado is going to have these weird lows. Now, again, we can get into, is this a different low? We can get into that, but I still believe he's got something in him. Nolan Gorman, I mean, it feels like 3 days ago people were freaking out about, and he's starting to heat up again. And again, that's the hitter he is, and people just have to get used to it. Brendan Donovan is a steady Brendan Donovan right now, and he's producing like he needs to. And I feel like when he's in the lineup consistent, it's good for the team. But then to your point too, we can all be like, Ivan Herrera is the next best catcher, and then he could go on a cold streak here soon. And that's also part of the game. There's very few hitters in baseball that aren't at least slightly streaky. Most guys go through highs, go through lows. So I overall feel good about the offense, especially because I think Nootbaar I think I've forgotten how important he can be to this offense because of his mix of on base and power. And he does hit. I mean, last year hit for a pretty good average. And they have Donovan, they have Gorman, but they seem to be like Donovan's mostly the on base type guy with some power. Gorman is like the power or walk, and that's it. Nootbaar is like the in between guy who really, to me, feels like the true split of a, like, Gorman could be that bat when he's hot in the middle of the order, but when he's not hot, it's really bad. Brendan Donovan's the leadoff hitter, but Nootbaar is the guy that can slide in that third spot, fifth spot in lineup, and you like that because when runners are on base, you feel good about him putting the ball in play, getting the single when he needs to just get that to drive two guys in rather than striking out. But you also can't blame injuries because every team has injuries, so you can't just, when we're at full strength, they're going to be fine. But yeah, I just think it's hard to believe the offense is going to be this bad, and if it gets a little bit better or even like 30% better, which isn't even what it should be, it's peak, but that's like, even if it's just slightly underperforming, I think it's like an 80 WRC plus going into today's game, 20% below league average. This offense should be as a whole 10% above league average. Let's say a 30% swing right there. So I feel pretty good about it. But specifically, it's actually one other it's interesting point about Herrera is that in August last year, the middle of August, Andrew Kisner had a higher WRC plus than Alejandro Kirk, or he was tied with Danny Jansen and was above Gabriel Moreno. And then he like was terrible the rest of the year and tanked in with 100 WRC plus guys. So it's like you can even go into August and have hot streaks and then total cold streak at the end. And if you asked me, and if you looked at the numbers in August last year, you would think Andrew Kisner was a better hitter than three of the targets that the Cardinals were looking at in the trade market last year. And we know that's not true. So sample sizes, I think, matter. But then to fans' credit, or I guess to their, if you're on the pessimistic side of it, it feels like a trend with the Cardinals every year that the offense just seems to not be what it should be. But I also kind of wonder how many teams around baseball feel that way about their offense when it's not performing top three. If like most people are disappointed by the overall output. So, but when we talk about, maybe let's talk about Nolan Arenado, because I think he's the center of most of the concern right now. But there are some other guys. What are you seeing with Nolan Arenado right now? What is your concern level on like a 1 to 10 scale about how about that he can get even just because I think most of us probably thought he was going to be better than last year where he was about 9% above league average. How concerned are you about him becoming a guy that is worthy of hitting in the 3-4 spot for the Cardinals this year?
It's tough because I'm concerned, and it's not like, and if he was, 2022 was last year, like we went through this last year. Last year he was looking the same at this point in the year as he is right now at this point, and I was like, well, look at what he did last year. He'll be fine. I am concerned because he just doesn't look right. Like nothing looks right. And he goes through month slumps where he does this. The problem is last year he went through the final couple months he was like this. It wasn't like, oh, here's, one really bad month of Nolan, one great one, and then he leveled out. He never leveled out. Like you need him. The biggest problem with him too is you need consistency from him. Like he's making $35 million a year, and I don't care about money, but it's on a team that doesn't spend a lot of money. Yeah. So that guy has to perform. Like he just does, and he has to perform consistently. And I get he had that hit today that got him within a run, but like, come on, like that was a jam shot that just fell up the middle. When in reality, in that situation, you need Nolan to hit an extra base hit. Like at some point in a big moment, he has to come through. And I feel like this has been this is his fourth year here. When does he come through in big moments? Like he had that one moment last year when the season was already over against Miami where he walked it off. But other than that, it's very few where it's like, we need you right now, Nolan. We need you to come through in this big moment like Mookie Betts does against us. Yeah. And it falls flat seemingly every time. So I'm not that concerned because I believe in the human being. Like I believe in Arenado, the person.
Yeah.
But if I was trying to give you baseball reasons for why I think he's going to be good, I don't think I have any.
That's fair. I think your point too about it being a prolonged stretch at the end of the year that never got better and it's a continuation is fair because it'd feel a little bit different if it was August that he was bad and then half of September he was really good again and then he finished bad. Like there was no redemption stretch for him. But I do think I've heard from people last year that they just say he was terrible all of last year, which just isn't true. And I know you're not one of those people who says that, but last year he had a 63 WRC plus in March through April. His is sitting at 60 right now. And I remember thinking back, it's really easy to forget, but that first month of the season, people are like, what is going on with Nolan Arenado? He looks terrible. It feels a little bit worse this time, anecdotally and from the fans, but it's a 3 WRC plus difference at this point. It was really bad last year. Then he went on and had a 138 WRC plus in May, 157 in June, 142 in July. It fell off to 91 in August and then 40 in September and October. So I think the fact that he's coming off of 90, 40, now 60, it's like, this is not looking good, especially when you're concerned about the back. The power is the thing that's really not there right now. I see the concerns. So yeah, from your perspective too, the baseball reasons, I can't really give you much that I see right now that makes me think he's going to be better. But I think the baseball reason I would give that makes me think that is the person he is, and that matters for a baseball player. Like he's going to work hard. He's not going to mail it in. He's not Anthony Rendon. He doesn't not want to be there. No. He wants to win. It hurts him more than anyone else that he's not performing well. For as mad as fans are at him, he's way more upset about it.
Yeah, I have a question too, and I think that plays. I think this is my perspective just from the outside. Like I've met Nolan a couple times when I worked there, but not enough to know him at all. I don't know him at all. Yeah. But from the outside looking in, I think how much he wants to win and how much he wants to be great hurts him so bad in big moments. Specifically, like he'll go on stretches where you'll see him like 5 games in a row in the first inning he'll hit a homer. But when you watch him late in games where it's like, okay, pressure's on, it matters now. He looks like he's on like, I don't know how to describe it. He looks like his mind's racing 5,000 miles an hour, and it's always to his detriment. And I wonder if he's ever gonna just calm down, like just take a breath. I get it's easier to say here, but that's just from the outside looking in. And part of that's also probably because he's always just antsy. That's just his mechanics in the box are antsy.
He's always bouncy.
Yeah, that's just how he's always been. But it seems like in big moments, he's like, gotta get a hit, and then it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I think he articulated this a little bit. I don't remember. It wasn't the first interview he gave about why they brought in Matt Carpenter, but it was down the line when he continued to be asked about it. He made a comment at one point that he learned about himself last year, that it was hard for him to call out the young guys or the other guys in the team for not performing well when he wasn't performing well. And not only did that say something about his leadership, but I think it says a lot about how he views himself. And to your point of that is how much pressure he puts on himself. And I wonder if that's part of why his highs are so high and why he can have 160 WRC plus months where he's just like the hottest hitter in baseball, because when he's on, he's fired up and he won't miss anything. He just believes every time he stands up there, he's going to crush it. And then when he's in moments like this, he probably goes up there being like, I have to come through. And you can't be good pitching when you're thinking like that. You at some point you got to do and not think. So I would agree with that for sure. Another baseball reason that isn't seen right now, but I think again is a pattern we've seen with Nolan Arenado, is that even if someone wants to try and argue this is the lowest we've seen him, which again, numbers show that last April and March he was pretty much this bad. And then last September, he was even worse. So he's not looking worse than he did last year right now, technically. But we've seen from all 3 years he's been here, or this is 4th year now, that he just has these stretches where it doesn't make sense. And there's nothing on the field that shows you it's going to get better. And then it just does. And that's just what that kind of breed of streaky hitter does. And Nolan Gorman fits into that conversation. And it's hard to play that game because at some point there's going to be a day, whether it's this year or 5 years from now, where he can't turn it back on. He is never going back to that player. This could be it. And every year that goes on, it becomes more and more likely that this is the last one or this is the time it happens. But I doubt that this is the year that Nolan Arenado is done being Nolan Arenado. At least he might be done being peak Nolan Arenado. And I think that's probably fair to say, but I just have a hard time believing he's not a significant contributor at the plate anymore. And And I think a lot of it is because too, it just seems like he's in his own head mechanically. Things are a little off right now, and we've seen that before. But I don't know. To your point, I don't think we're not going to solve it in a conversation, and we're not going to be able to prove one way or the other. It's just going to take some time to see it. And I can't say it's the middle of May when we can for sure know. I can't say it's wait till June. It's just everyone's got to have that own parameter. I'm okay being a little more patient with him. I feels like you're being, not that we are okay with him continue to perform like this, but I think we're not going to. There's some people are saying he should be benched. That's like, ridiculous. That's not happening.
No, and to put Jordan Walker at there, like, what are you talking about? Gosh. Either way, because Jordan Walker, by the way, doing worse than Arenado, in case you guys are wondering. But the thing about Nolan is, one, he's still quasi-productive when he's this bad. Like, he was on a 9-game hitting streak. He wasn't at net zero. But also, like, we know that when he's hot, he gets hotter than any player I've ever seen. It'll legitimately be 6 games in a row with a homer. Yeah. And, 2 doubles in every game sprinkled in. So I'm not even like, if it's June and he's bad still, I'm not going to say, well, he's done, because there's still a chance he has a good second half. Like, it's baseball. Hitting is very hard. Yeah. It is. Look at Wilson last year. He was horrible in the first half, basically. Second half, he was the best player in baseball. It doesn't make any sense, and it's hard to watch, and I get it. And I'm frustrated with him too. Like, he needs to come through in these big moments because he's the guy that says, I want to win. I want to win. Yeah. And I know he does. I don't question that at all. But at some point, you are the best player on the team. You have to be the reason they're winning if you want to win. But I still believe in him. And if he has a horrible year, then he has a horrible year. But I wouldn't bet on that.
Yeah, and to your point too, and I think we can open up the conversation to Paul Goldschmidt too, is that when you're 2 of the highest paid players on the team, there just are different expectations. And there is it's a little bit different when Jordan Walker isn't having it than when the guy making $35 million isn't having it. That's a problem. That sets you back. You could have spent that $35 million on 2 starting pitchers of higher quality, or you could have spent that $35 million on 3 bats that can also be streaky. Like, there's a reason you invest all of that into one player, because they can provide what other players can't. And the streakiness is, I think it's just a frustrating part of investing in a player like Nado, is it's going to feel amazing when he's at the highs. And when it all comes together, he can put together a 2022-esque year where it's pretty much all highs, but then you're also going to have to deal with these seasons. So Arenado, streaky, definitely concerned, but we're not giving up on him. Paul Goldschmidt, is that the same tune you have with him right now?
Yes, not streaky necessarily, but because he's always been bad in April. The weird thing about me is I have more confidence that Goldie is going to get back to where he was last year than Arenado is going to get back to where he was at the All-Star break when he was in the All-Star game. And I don't know why. I have confidence in both of them. Goldie doesn't look all that different to me. Like, he's struggling like he normally struggles. He normally struggles where he's just having days where he'll chase too many pitches, or he'll take strikes that he shouldn't be taking and then gets in bad counts. But he's not getting blown away by heaters like he was at times last year. Yeah. I actually think I feel more confident than I did coming into the year, because he's really not getting blown away anymore. So he's got that part figured out. Like, I think they'll both be fine. Goldie especially, because he's just so mechanically sound that he's at least going to be okay. I think Nolan has more of that, this could collapse quickly and be really bad. With Goldie's, like, what's bad for him? 800 OPS? Like that. Yeah. That's where he's going to get hot too, and he'll have a month where he's 180 or 170 WRC plus. So I'm confident in both of them. And I think both things can be true. You can be confident in them to turn it around, but also be frustrated that they're this bad right now.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah. I don't know if this is what you're saying, but how I would articulate it, I'm more confident in Goldie's floor than I am Nolan Arenado's. Like, I think he's higher floor. But I would still say that I feel like Nolan Arenado can reach higher heights still than Paul Goldschmidt can. Like, I just don't see Paul Goldschmidt being a 140 WRC plus guy, 900 plus OPS. I mean, he could, but that would surprise me. And it would maybe surprise me still with Nolan Arenado because of how it looks right now. But there's still a part of me that believes he's got that in him, even if it's just a 3-month stretch, one more year of it. But I also think the floor, like if he ended up finishing the year in the 700s OPS or low 700s, high 600s, I wouldn't necessarily, I'd be surprised, disappointed, but it wouldn't be the most surprising thing I've ever seen because of especially how it looks right now. Paul Goldschmidt, though, if he was anything below an 800 OPS, that feels really off to me because he's a guy who's going to get the singles still. He's going to take his walks. And his lows tend to, even if he has lows like Nolan Arenado, they don't tend to be as long, and they tend to be in April. So there's a little bit of consistency there. And I think his last year was overblown how bad it was. People want to act like
it was pretty good.
Yeah, it was actually still pretty good. It just wasn't, when you see him be an MVP level hitter and then drop down to just being pretty good, like it's going to feel a lot more drastic than if he was. I mean, he honestly was just kind of like his typical self last year.
He was the best hitter on the team, which is what was funny to me. Like, because Gorman and Walker, deservedly so, they got praised for their years. They had really good years. But it's like, okay, but you're hating on Goldie, who was better than both of them. Like, how does this make any sense? It's expectation always. Like when you sign that contract, I want players to get paid as much as possible. So I will never say, oh, he doesn't earn the contract. That's the best contract maybe in Cardinals history that they gave Paul Goldschmidt. And he's earned every bit of it. But obviously that comes with expectations, and he knows it. Nolan knows it. So, it feels worse when Goldie's 800 than it does when Nolan Gorman's 780. It just feels worse and different for whatever reason. Yeah.
And from a team building standpoint, obviously, they have to be aware of how much they're paying certain guys, and they can't overpay guys. But for a player, I'm not you can't blame them for turning down. They're not going to be like, oh, I think I deserve less, especially when you start off your career being paid almost nothing and you're producing way more than you're getting paid. So all to the players chasing the bag there. And I don't think they're doing that maliciously. It's just, that's what you would do if you're in their shoes. I do think it's interesting to bring up Jordan Walker. And also I think it's interesting that people look at Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado struggles and are like, okay, just replace them with Jordan Walker when he's been equally, if not worse, at the plate. And their argument would just be that he's young. But it's how quickly have Cardinal fans turned on a guy for being young and now they're just not good enough. Or you look at Victor Scott, who's, I don't know what his batting average is now after the last hit, but it was 0.07.
That hit.
Bad. And it's
he got out on it.
And it feels like the people that are saying Victor Scott should be starting every day, the average doesn't matter, it'll be fine, or the same people that are like, Nolan Arenado is terrible now. So it's how can both be true ones? I don't know. So let's talk about that Victor Scott situation for a second. I feel like there is just a war on Twitter right now between the Victor Scott truthers, and obviously Victor Scott's come on our podcast a few times. He's awesome. I think the world of him. I think he's an awesome dude. I'm so glad he got the chance, even if I think it would have probably made more sense for some other people to be up. Excited for him. Excited he's got this taste of it. I think he can be awesome one day. But I worry what's happening right now is what people have warned of, that this can hurt his development. He's not ready at the plate. He's clearly ready defensively. He's clearly ready on the base pass for the most part, except there's some weird snafus that have happened. But
I thought, did you see that today though? So he turned and they called him out. That rule to me, I've always thought that it should be, if you intend to go to second base, then you're out. If you're making a move to go to second, he was not trying to go to second. He just turned one way. He should not have been out on that. I thought that was ridiculous.
I can get from their standpoint that it'd be hard to differentiate when someone tries or not. But at the same time, it's
he didn't even take a step that way.
Yeah, I was going to say that it feels better for me for the umpire to have do a judgment call of he clearly was trying to go to second, because you can tell when a guy's turning, bolting that way. And so it was dumb. But
and most of the time when they do that too, they'll panic and rush back to the bag. He didn't. So he obviously wasn't whatever. I mean, I get by the rule maybe, but that was just so silly. How much can this guy take? He was over 23. He gets a hit and immediately it gets taken away from him.
So bad. So yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Victor Scott. I think he's gonna be great. I want him to be the best version of himself, and I don't know if this is gonna make him the best version of himself. Kayla, where do you stand on the Victor Scott situation right now?
I think I was very much in the camp before Carlson's injury that he should go to AAA. And for some reason, there's this weird thing on Twitter and everywhere actually, not just Twitter, where it's if you're saying something like that, that means you're saying he's not going to be a productive major leaguer. I'm not saying that. I know he's going to be productive in the field, even though he had a bad day today. I know he's going to be productive when he gets on base. It's not about that to me. It's about the fact that if he's at AAA right now and he's figuring it out and he's figuring out how to lift the ball in the air with some more power, because guess what pitchers are doing? They're giving him pitches in the middle of the zone and up and saying, burn somebody, I dare you. And he can't do it right now. And he's just flying out, and people are saying solid contact. Well, how many times does he have to fly out to the middle of the outfield before you stop saying solid contact? It's a problem and a hole in his swing right now. So I really like Victor. I think he's producing right now fine in the field and things like that.
Yeah.
But for him as a player, as one of the most talented players we've developed in a long time, I think the best thing for him is to be a AAA, figuring it out, struggling and failing at a level where it doesn't matter if you fail.
Yeah.
Like right now, especially with the offense struggling, like it probably feels like it's weighing on him.
For sure.
And I don't want that for him. And I don't care how level-headed you are. If you are 0 for 23, you make an error and then you get thrown out on a hit,
yeah.
it's going to weigh on you, especially when you lose by a run. So
Sure.
I think it'd be the best thing for him would be AAA. He's exciting and I get it, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I love the way you use the term, the freedom to fail at AAA. I've seen this comment sometimes. It's like, what can Victor learn at AAA that he can't learn at the major leagues? Well, when you're getting so overpowered by the pitching that you're facing, you get into bad habits and you stop believing in yourself and you start trying to figure out, because when you're at the major league level, the goal is to win. Like that, it's not to be the flashy numbers and to, like, obviously that helps contribute to winning, but he needs to do everything he can to get on base and score. And at AAA, he can focus on just becoming the best hitter possible. But so he's going to try, and you can see it at the plate sometimes. He's laying down bunts more often, or he's trying to finagle a hit somewhere here and there. And it's like, although that should always be a part of his game, we want him to be that guy who hits those line drives in the gaps, turns singles into doubles, doubles into triples, because even though a stolen base is awesome, so is a triple. It's just cutting out the middleman there. Yeah. So like you want him to become that kind of player, and clearly he's not doing that here right now. Maybe tomorrow's the day he turns it around and we look stupid. He goes on he hits for 400 the next month. That'd be awesome. And I don't think you ever doubt he has the talent, but it's just the conundrum you're in. He could figure it out tomorrow and be great the rest of the year, or you could damage his future by continuing to do this. And the Cardinals have to weigh which one's more likely. And right now it feels like it's trending toward this is not helping him in his development. No. And then people are like, well, what other option do you have? Michael Ciani's bat's not worse than Victor Scott's right now. So you're not
It can't be. It literally can't be worse.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it could be, but it won't be.
Yeah. And even if it was, it's like you go from a 0.07 batting average to a 0.0. Like, okay, you're pretty much already at the floor offensively.
And I do have a question though, like Nootbaar, when he comes back, would you consider putting him in center field? And I'll lead off with my thoughts
for sure.
Quick. I have a couple thoughts. One, my immediate reaction is that's the easiest way to get Vic where I want him, which is to be producing at AAA. To get Nootbaar in the lineup and to keep Herrera in the lineup. That's the easiest way to accomplish all those things.
Yeah.
But I'm also concerned that Noot has had a lot of little nicky-nacky injuries that you're much more likely to get when you're in center field flying around.
Yeah.
So I think it's both sides of the coin here. And I don't know where I stand, so I want to know where you stand. I'd consider it though. I think.
Oh yeah, I'm for sure in the consider it. I think I just kind of ruled it out because I felt like the Cardinals were ruling it out. So sometimes there's things where I'm like, sure, it might make sense, but like it's just not going to happen. So I'm not going to waste hours of breath talking about it. Like even if I was in the camp, which I'm not, that Jordan Walker should be a first baseman, there's no point talking about it because the Cardinals don't believe that. They're not doing that. They've said it, and like maybe a year from now, if his defense was so bad, they'd consider it. But anyways, that's a weird tangent. I would consider it, and like you said, especially with the Herrera coming up, I think it's a lot of things. Like if Herrera wasn't hitting the way he is right now, I don't think I would feel like you need to force him into it. But the team is 6-7. They haven't taken advantage of the opportunities to have a better record. They have a thin margin for error this year. They have to be good. So they're going to have to take some of these risks. They didn't take it in terms of the types of pitchers they targeted. They tried to mitigate as much risk as possible there, at least in their minds. I think at this point, especially Dylan Carlson being out, Tommy Edman being out, they're kind of backed into a corner. Victor Scott didn't work. You could put Michael Ciani there, and it's safe, but does it help with your offense right now? I don't know. I would love to see them put Nootbaar in center, or I'm for them putting Nootbaar in center, Donovan in left, and at least trying it. The defense looks really good right now, and maybe part of that is because Victor Scott's in center and he's covering for issues. But even you look at his defensive numbers right now, he's not like blowing the league out of the water defensively from a DRS outs above average. Doesn't mean he's not doing that, but it's not like he's clearly covering for Jordan Walker's mistakes or clearly covering for Brendan Donovan's mistakes. So I would like to try it. And if it's so bad and it's like clearly the defense is taking a huge hit, then you put Michael Ciani in center field and you move Nootbaar to left, and then you figure out how to work in Herrera as much as possible. But with how the lineup is right now and you need the offense, I like the idea of doing that. But But I see all sides of it. I'm not super like if the Cardinals went Siani every day in center, I wouldn't blame them. But the injuries with Nootbaar do scare me though, because he's not injury prone into me right now. But if he continues to have a few more of these, it's going to get to the point where it's like, dude, like you got to figure out a way to stay healthy. And it's kind of weird how long his rehab stint has taken. Like I get they're trying to get his timing going, but
don't you get the feeling? Friday, I kind of get the feeling that it's not even as much that as it is, hey, Wilson still can't catch, and we need Pedro Pages on this roster just in case something happens. True. Like, doesn't it feel like that? Because Newt was in St. Louis taking batting practice and then went back to Memphis. That's not normal. Why was he doing that? Yeah. So I'm not saying it's like a conspiracy theory or anything, but I do think it's a lot of the guy they want to send down, they don't feel comfortable sending down yet.
Yeah. Well, I guess it depends on what they try to do with Victor Scott too, because if they felt maybe this is telling us that they're not ready to give up on the Victor Scott experiment, because if they were ready to send him down, then you could have just made that swap today. You could have put Nootbaar in center, sent Victor Scott down. Pedro Pages is still on the roster as the backup. And then you still have Siani off the bench. You have who would the other guys off the bench be? Crawford and then
Burleson.
Yeah. So that I feel like that would work. It's a 1-for-1 swap, Scott to Nootbaar. Yeah. So yeah, I wonder if that's playing a part of it, and especially since they don't have to rush a decision, they can wait a little bit. Maybe it's giving them a little bit more time to figure out: do we feel comfortable with Nootbaar in center? Do we not? What do we do with Scott? How do we get Herrera's bad lineup? Because these aren't like you said, like it's hard to know what to do. So these aren't like sit down, have a 10-minute conversation. We can figure out the roster. And there's probably some wisdom in not wasting options and sending guys up and down trying to figure it out. But so maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, it's obviously difficult. I don't know what the word is. I'm glad I don't have to make these decisions. Like that, they're not decisions I would want to have to make, especially with guys like Victor and figuring out what's best for him, what's best for the team, and how to balance both of them and which one you should go with. Yeah. But for me, like, how many runs is Victor Scott saving you in the outfield? Like, he's very fast and he gets to balls that he shouldn't get to.
Yeah.
But he also has really bad reads. Like, not dreadful. They're not like the worst thing you'll ever see where he's running completely opposite ways. But they're just little things where like a ball drops in where you're like, with his speed, he should probably catch that one. Yeah. Happened today a couple of times. So how many runs is he really saving? And also, like, could he save more runs in the future if he's at AAA learning how to fail again in the outfield? Like, those are things they need to consider. And I just think it's hard to keep Herrera's bat out of the lineup. Like, he's legitimately like your 5-hitter and he's earning it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like he's just batting fifth because there's no one else. He's batting fifth because he has like a 9-something OPS with 3 homers.
Yeah.
Like, so I would hate to see them waste his hot streak because they're still just keeping Victor and not wanting to put Newton center field.
Couldn't agree more with that. And then you look at that potential lineup. You got Donovan Goldie. You would have Contreras, Nato, Gorman, Yvonne, Nootbaar, Jordan Walker, Mason Wynn. And with the way Mason Wynn's hitting right now as your 9-hole hitter, like I really like the outlook of that lineup. Obviously, Goldie and Nato aren't producing right now, but you move things around. Quick tangent, real quick on last thing in the lineup, and then let's talk about maybe what we want to see from the club against the Diamondbacks and A's coming up. But how much would have to happen for you to consider like this is so premature and I'm not there. I just think it's interesting to have that conversation since other people are. What would have to happen, or how long would these slumps have to continue for you to feel like it's worth rattling the nest a little bit and moving Goldschmidt and Arenado down in the order? Right now, there really isn't a lot of reason to, because it's not like Jordan Walker should replace them. Mm-hmm. And I guess you could say Yvonne and Wilson. When Nootbaar comes back, maybe it becomes more of a conversation. But say the other cogs are really hitting like they should, and it's Nato and Goldschmidt, or one of them not producing. What does it take, or how long does it take for this kind of slump to happen for you to be like, Goldschmidt, you got to hit 6th now, or Nato, you have to hit 7th? Like, what does it take for you to do that, if anything?
Yeah, I would lean towards I wouldn't do it, but I think it would take. I'd have to be at least after the All-Star break with those two not showing any promise, and guys like Walker, Gorman, Nootbaar, all of those guys being like, you have to get them more at bats. Like, that's the only way you're going to win games. But my other thought is, okay, if those two aren't hitting, this team's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, that's where I'm at. I love our young bats. I really do. But if those two at 1st and 3rd are not producing the way that they can, and I'm not saying they both have to be 2022 versions of themselves, but somewhere between 22 and 23 versions is where we need them. You're not winning a lot of games anyway, so you might as well go down with them. Like, you might as well get to the trade deadline. And if they're really bad and the team's really bad, then you're trading both of them. But if they're really good but you wait for it. Like, this always brings me back to this. In 2017, I know they were cheating. Okay, so I'll throw that out there. But in 2017, AJ Hinch was asked when he was going to move George Springer before the World Series out of the leadoff spot. He said, "That's my guy. I'm not doing it." Well, George Springer hit the most home runs ever in a World Series, and they won. Now, yes, they were cheating, but he was also cheating when he was bad. So I don't care. Like, that to me, like, I think you stick with your guys because everyone on that team knows you need those guys to be good. And if they're not, you're limited anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think maybe the one way it would become interesting is, for me, I think that the bats that could potentially change that conversation is like a Jordan Walker, where I think if he takes that step that he could take, that he hasn't taken yet, but he's proven like he belongs now as like a potential top bat coming up in the league. I think he's a guy that could make the Cardinals go, do we potentially knock one of them down the order? Or like a Nootbaar and Contreras. Like, if those three are the guys that are producing at a super high level, those are guys that I feel like they can manage the highs and lows a little bit. Or like a Nolan Gorman, I don't see him, like, he's too streaky. He's like Kyle Schwarber. You don't build an offense around Kyle
bad him
Schwarber.
leadoff.
Yeah. Oh, you never know. The Brendan Donovan is too good as leadoff hitter.
No, yeah,
but
I'm kidding.
I have a hard time being like Nolan Gorman should be the reason that a Nolan Arenado or a Paul Goldschmidt come down, because you could do that while he's white hot and then go through 3 weeks straight where he's also not hitting. So it's like that doesn't help. So it has to be a guy that's proven that, even though we've talked about all guys go through highs and lows, they have to be a guy that you can feel consistent, that you're not going to feel a month later that they don't belong to the 3 spot either. Especially if you're going to move guys of that pedigree, you just don't do that. And I love your point. Like, if this team's going to be successful, they have to be successful too. If they're not being successful, the odds of this team being successful are not very high anyways. You ride the ship, and maybe you're trading Goldschmidt to Arizona and Nato to LA at the deadline.
Colorado.
Who knows? Wow, that'd be wild if he went back to Colorado. So yeah, we'll have to see what that looks like. But for now, I don't see really a scenario where that would happen next year. But yeah, we'll see.
Don't you get a feeling though, like, if those two are bad, and I'm not saying like they're just mediocre. Let's say they're both below a 720 OPS, wherever below that. So around Tommy Edman production level offensively.
Oh boy.
If they're both at that level, like, major changes are coming for this organization if that happens, I think. So you might as well just run it out with them. Like, they're your guys. You built around them. You put a lot of stock in them. So I'm fine with you going down with those two. I wouldn't go down with Nolan Gorman batting fourth or second. I believe in Gorman, but I think he's a perfect 5 hitter or 6 hitter because he's going to hit you a bunch of homers, but I don't really want him up in big situations with multiple guys on all the time because he's going to have moments where he's just not going to hit. Yeah. So I'm going down with them. That's what I'm at. And if it doesn't work, then we're rebuilding and we're figuring it out in the off season. But for now, those two are my guys, and I'm going to see where they take me.
Yeah, and how many other teams, unless you're LA or the Mets, can afford to have a guy making $35 million or $25 million that don't hit? Like, that is a recipe for your team not succeeding. So totally agree with that. It'd be very, I don't know where you would stand. I don't think this would turn into a full scale rebuild if they're traded, because you do have a lot of, it's more of a retool. You're freeing up a lot of money. It depends on how much they want to invest in payroll, but you can go after some pitching. You've got bats that, but to your point, there's no bat right now that I feel like you can clearly put into that 3-4 spot and they're ready to take over for a Paul Goldschmidt.
Pete Alonso.
Yeah. So maybe you could make a move like that. That
Please
would
don't.
be Juan Soto. We finally make it happen.
Oh, he's gonna get like $600 million. That's not happening.
I don't know. Bill DeWitt. You never know.
Yeah, he's gonna go to Hal Steinbrenner and say, "Yeah, beat this offer. Here's $600 million, Soto." I don't see it happening.
Yeah, there's no way. So we'll see. I mean, who knows? I'm really not that the MLB draft is like the NBA draft. You don't get a star right away, but I'm really interested to see. It seems like some of those arms that people like will potentially go higher. So maybe a Nick Hertz or some crazy bat lanes at 7. Maybe that in 3 years becomes the bat of the future. I don't know. But this is all premature. And I genuinely think the Cardinals are going to turn this around. And I think they have kind of turned around. They're 6-7. They went on the road against the Dodgers in 4 games, won on the road against the Padres, won that series. They won the series against the Marlins, and they really should have won this Phillies series. And you could argue they should have split the Dodgers one. Now, you can't keep playing should have on things, but it's better than I feel better about should have, and the signs are there than they are just getting the crap beat out of them every game. And that's just not happening really. So What do you need to see, Caleb, from the Cardinals as they're about to face the Diamondbacks on the road? And I think they're in Oakland for that series as well. What do you need to see from them to keep that optimism going? And what are some things that this time next week could happen to make you change the tune and be a little bit more toward the pessimism that maybe this isn't going to work?
Okay, so I'll answer the first one, the pessimism first. Nothing.
Okay.
They could go 2-4 on the road trip, and I would still say, okay, we're 17 games. No, what would it be? 19 games into the season? Like it's still whatever. So nothing's gonna make me like. I'll be angry. I'll be upset in the moment, but I won't be like, oh, the season's over. I just don't. Like they were 10-24 last year, and I was still riding with the team. So I don't know. I'm broken inside. They can't break me anymore. So but in terms of like optimism, Goldie and Nolan have historically hit very, very well in Arizona. Obviously, Goldie almost won multiple MVPs there, finished in second a couple times, and Nolan just always killed them, always killed Arizona. I need those two to do something. I need a homer from both of them in the first series, and I think the Cardinals should go 4-2. How those games happen, I don't know. Sweep if they lose the series to Arizona and sweep the god awful Oakland Athletics, fine. But if they just win both series, that's great too. But they need to go 4-2, and I need a homer out of both of them. That's what I want.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like if I saw Jordan Walker start getting it going and New Bark comes back and is hot, I think that helps me a little bit, even if Nato and Goldschmidt are performing, because it's like here, the collective offense can at least carry you at times, but it can't carry you the whole season. You have to have those two guys going. I do agree. If they don't go 4-2, I was riding with them when they were 10-24 too. Like it's just, especially because they went on that run against the Red Sox and Cubs and Dodgers after that. They just looked great. I was like, here we go. They're on their way back. And I do feel like it's different than last year. It felt like every single unit of the team was either below average or playing horribly. And right now, it's really just the offense that's disappointing. The pitching, I'm not going to try and act like it's stellar, but the rotation is good enough. It's what the blueprint was for improvement. It's not sexy by any means, but it gets it done. The bullpen genuinely looks good to me, and I get the numbers. You can debate them, but it feels a lot better. Defense is better. So even if the offense continues, or if the offense does well and the pitching goes through a little bit of a slump, then it's like, well, that's baseball too. Even the best rotations have a couple times, like Bobby Miller got imploded by the Cubs, but I would argue his stuff didn't look that great that day. That just sometimes happens. So, I would like to see them go 4-2. I'm not going to give up on anything with them. I do think I really want to see Goldie and Arenado get it going at least a little bit right now. That would help me feel a lot better about this club because they do ride and die on them. And I get why fans don't want to. I don't think we're telling anyone to be patient. We say we feel like, but I get why people don't feel patient with this club anymore. They've after last year and after the deterioration of the culture and deterioration of the performance over the years, I understand why people are skeptical. So I don't think either of us are blaming people for feeling like this could be bad, but I just don't agree with anyone who says it's not different than last year. They're the same team. They're destined for failure again. They could fail again, but the signs seem a lot better right now. I don't know. Would you get that sentiment that it feels a lot better, looks a lot better than it did this time last year?
Yeah, I think they're playing good baseball. Like they're not hitting very well, but that's going to happen. That's why they say pitching and defense wins championships, because that doesn't slump generally.
Yeah.
But like I always think people say this team doesn't look like they're trying and stuff like that when the offense is bad, because it just looks lazy when you're seeing pop-ups and ground balls. Even though it's not, that's just how it looks.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do think a lot of people came in with the mindset that, okay, this team needs to surprise me. They need to do something that I don't see coming. They need to win the series against the Dodgers and, sweep the Padres. And we're like, whoa, the Cardinals are really back. And that didn't happen. And they're kind of just mulling along at right around 500, trying to figure out who they are. And it's just kind of getting people frustrated because they're not being surprised in the way I think they wanted to be surprised. So I think that's a lot of it. I don't know. I think they're playing fine. Like their infield defense has been great. Nolan Gorman legitimately looks like a Gold Glove caliber second baseman right now. Now, I don't know if that'll continue, but that's the best double play combination I've seen in a long time with him and Wynn. So there's a lot of positives. And for me, if you're looking at a team and how this team's built, if the negatives are offense, that you're in a fine spot then, because I think the offense is going to eventually be fine.
Yeah. And I think too, like it's so easy to overlook. You brought up Nolan Gorman's development defensively. Jordan Walker at least doesn't look like historically bad in right field anymore. He's a lot better than that. Yeah. Mason Wynn, he's not like tearing the cover off the ball, but compared to last year, his OPS is like 300 points higher. He looks like a competent league average shortstop batting wise, and then his defense is awesome right now, which everyone knew the arm was there, but there were questions about his erraticness defensively sometimes, or he just felt like there's still room to grow there, even if he had all the tools defensively. But he looks great right now. And Alec Burleson, that seems to be the most unlucky guy in baseball still. And at some point, you got to stop being like. At some point, just got to start producing. But like, he needs to play well. Yeah, so that helps.
I do think part of it with him too that I see is like everyone's like, well, he hit that ball 110. It's like, yeah, but he swung at a pitch 4 inches below the zone and he hit a ground ball. Like,
yeah,
it's pitch selection with him a lot of the time. He is unlucky, similar to how I think Andre Palante is very unlucky when he's pitching. Like 3 hits today off him. They were like, are you kidding me on all 3 of them? But at the same time, there's things you can do to decrease your unluckiness. Or,
for sure.
Increase your luck. That's the way. Like, don't swing at pitches out of the zone and you won't be as unlucky probably.
Yeah. And something I think is flying under the radar a little bit going back to the offense is we talk about how much Nolan Arenado struggles are a continuation of last year, but Wilson Contreras at the plate is a continuation of how incredible he was the last 3 months of last year. Because some people want to put in the box of like, okay, it was just a small sample. Well, I don't feel like July 1st to the end of the year is a small sample size, but he was top 5 in almost every statistical category. And then you look at him this year and he's continuing to hit the cover off the ball. Again, today wasn't as good, but overall, he's been really good to start. Ivan Herrera's been good. Brendan Donovan looks awesome. And he's a continuation of last year, too. The last 10 weeks of the year, 140 something WRC plus, maybe he's 137. Now he's a 900 OPS right now. There are things to be excited about. And for all the things we can point to that are negative, they are somehow still 6-7 with a pretty tough schedule to start the year. They're not like 6-7 after facing, I mean, they did face the Marlins, but it's not like they also faced the Mets and the A's and all this already. If you told me they were 6-7 to start the year, I'd probably been like, I think some things went well. And it feels like we're talking way more about the negatives, which tends to happen.
How much more positive would this episode have been if Victor would have caught that fly ball and they would have won 4-2?
Yeah, for real. Yeah.
Like that's like, and we would be talking about them winning 3 series in a row after the Dodgers series.
For sure.
That's just the baseball season. Like, I like that St. Louis fans ride the highs and really ride the lows. That's what makes it fun. Like, that's what we all do. But it's also like you could be able to take a step back and say, hey, like, it's baseball. Weird things are going to happen. Like, you played this game today 100 times. I think the Cardinals win it 60 of the times, and they lost it. They lost it this time. It happens.
Yep.
So, or maybe even 100, maybe 95 of the times Victor catches that ball. He just did it today. So that's what happens. But I think they're going to be fine. Like, they're not playing bad baseball. Last year, they were playing bad baseball in the first month. Like, you were watching, like, I don't know what they're doing, but everything looks bad. I'm not seeing that now. I'm seeing some frustrating losses because you're always they do that thing where they tease a comeback and you're just that one final hit away from completing the comeback. They've done that like 5 times this year already, I think. But they're right in every game. They're not getting blown out. They've been blown out like twice or once. Like, they're fine.
Yeah, and it felt like they would roll over in games too. Like, they wouldn't even tease you that they're coming back, or they maybe do it a little bit, but it was like 8-4. Like, they weren't coming back in that game. Last year, it felt like when they would lose the lead or something would happen, it would just snowball and spiral. And that doesn't really feel like it's happening this year. And then they're also trying to make comeback. And not that they weren't trying last year, but they're like, it just feels different in that way. And also last year, what they were preaching is patience with the pitching that was clearly broken. And there was just, how was it going to get better? This year, the pitching looks pretty good, the bullpen, the defense. The thing that we are preaching patience right now is the offense. And our things that we are saying could be different is Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, Lars Nootbaar returning. These are commodities you believe in. It's not, hey, let's call up Matthew Liberatore. Hey, let's see what Dakota Hudson has. Like, that's a formula to fail for Jake Woodford, Drew Rom, all these guys get thrown in there. It's like, it's just not going to happen. But when you're telling me that it's like, hey, trust that Paul Goldschmidt will be better. Trust that Nolan Arenado will be better. Trust that Lars Nootbaar coming back will help. It's like, oh, I see the path toward the team being even better, with a team that already with the struggles is throwing away some games that you could argue that they, like you said earlier, that they could be like 9-4 and they've also struggled. So I like it. I feel good about the team right now. I was optimistic about the team coming in, but I could have seen the team being in a lot worse of a place right now than they are, record wise, feeling wise, vibes wise. I think it's going to be okay. But again, I don't blame people for not liking to hear that right now because they heard that last year and it didn't turn around and it got worse. But I think I also feel like I'm not doomsday either, that if this year 2024 goes poorly, that it's like the Cardinals experience is going to be brutal, because they just are not a team destined for a Houston Astros, Chicago Cubs, Washington Nationals type rebuild. They might be middle of the pack for a little while, but they've got reasons to be fun and exciting. They'll be transitioning leadership soon. Obviously the ownership isn't changing, but Mosaic will be changing. Things will hypothetically it should be different moving forward, and that gives me a little bit of excitement. But I say that with a grain of salt because you never know. But I just don't see a reason to burn it down right now. Any other final thoughts on that?
Yeah, my last thought is I find it funny, and this happens all the time, is we saw the stretch of games to start the year. And we're like, this is going to be tough. Like, they're playing a lot of good teams. They're going to play one of the best teams in baseball, I think, in Arizona. I don't know. They're not doing amazing right now, but I still think their roster-wise, especially when everyone's healthy and Monty's back and Eduardo Rodriguez is back, they're really, really good. And everyone was like, okay, just go 500 in the first month. Like, and then we're fine. We'll weather the storm. But now and I said this at the time, now we're seeing what going 500 looks like.
Yeah.
And no one likes it because it's like, it's frustrating. So I find that funny because at the end we could be looking up and they're 8-8 in their first 16 games, which we all knew was a tough 16 games. Yeah. And then it lines up a little bit and everyone's like, oh, but I wanted them to be better than that. But we were all kind of like 8-8's great in the first 16 here. Like that's weathering the storm. So I think it's just keep it into perspective of we got 5.5 more months left of this regular season. Sure. And who knows, like, maybe we have like Tekoa Roby comes up and he's great and no one saw that coming.
Yeah.
Like, things like that can happen that you just don't see coming that changes an outlook of a team. Like Brendan fought for the Diamondbacks last year.
For sure.
So we just have to wait and see. But I just think that's funny because everyone's like, just go 500 and weather the storm. And then it's like they're weathering the storm at 500 and everyone's like, oh, they suck. They suck. Yeah. And it's like, well, they're doing what you asked.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone would feel any better right now if Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt looked great, but the pitching was bad, right? Actually, I think people would feel worse. They're like, see, the problem's still there. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I totally agree. It's really interesting. But that's just the beauty. Like I love, you said it earlier, it's the beauty of Cardinal fans and why we love the Cardinals is that they live and die in every pitch. They live and die in every inning. And a lot of fan bases will just look at the scores from last week and be like, oh, this is interesting. I'll get into in October. But Cardinal fans follow each game like it's an NFL game where it holds even more weight every single time. Love it, but it can be frustrating at times when we overreact to things, but it's okay. That's why we love Cardinal baseball, and we appreciate you listening to us. And obviously, again, you can find Caleb over on Twitter at CalebNoble08. He's always got awesome stuff on there, but then also your podcast with your dad, the Hard Nine podcast. Anything you've got coming up with that soon?
We probably have an episode, I think, dropping tomorrow. I'm going to have a long episode, a long day of doing podcasts today, but talking about Arenado and Goldie probably again. But so we got that coming up. Just go over there and check us out. That's about all. You come to my Twitter. I do overreact sometimes too. So just
we all do.
If you go back and see some deleted tweets, that's because 5 minutes later, I realized I don't agree with what I just said. But you can go follow me over there if you want to. Just don't be too mean to me.
For sure. Yes, go follow their podcast, subscribe over on YouTube, and then also follow them on Twitter. Again, if this is your first time watching or you've been watching before, please subscribe. Helps the channel out a ton. Like the stream also helps out a ton. We appreciate you guys being here. We'll be on again Sunday. We have a guest coming on, which we'll talk more about that coming soon. Obviously, after that, we'll have seen them finish against the Diamondbacks and the A's. So we'll see, are they still a 500 team above 500? Are there more reasons to be concerned? No matter what, take a breath. It's April. There's a lot of the season left to go. It doesn't mean it'll get better, but it is early. Don't lose sleep over it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.